Yo, what's going on, lifers? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, and today's guest is coming to us by way of being across the pond. She is in the future, 7 hours to be exact from where we sit today. So she'll be able to talk about what we might be able to expect later this evening in our own world. A friend of mine that I met earlier this year on a pilgrimage we both shared in Wyoming, amongst other friends and like minds. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about her story, her involvement in this world that we both share together, and a fascination and appreciation for things. But coming to us by way of the UK, Miss Olivia Khwaja, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Well, thank you for that intro. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you tonight, 7 hours ahead.
Yeah, tonight we were just talking off camera about some interesting changes that have taken place in the United States that have had a rippling effect over there to your part of the world. Without getting like too deep into the specifics of that, what has that been like as far as in what do you guys watch us as far as in taking either trends or like what are these crazy people doing over there, or kind of what's the the perception?
I'd say it's more similar than you realize. I think everyone is going on similar journeys. We have different um, little bubbles that we all seem to exist within these days, and I think those are very much replicated here as well. So it's been interesting and somewhat surprising to see just how people have reacted to the result. I think some of us that have been on a journey for the last few years and have discovered what we've discovered about nutrition and how much of the information that we thought was true isn't true, have probably opened our minds more so than others to the concept that there could be other areas of what we thought was correct that aren't maybe isn't as correct as we thought. And so maybe we're a little bit more accustomed to things turning out a bit differently, maybe a bit more open to wanting things to change, right? And to see things change from the ground up. And we're all very excited about that. But we've got to remember that a lot of people have not been on that journey with us, and they're pretty much where we were, however many years ago. And they see the world very differently, and they're kind of scared by what has happened. So even though, from what my opinion would be that we're heading in a very positive direction. Other people will see it very differently. So I think it's very much similar to what you guys are experiencing over there, maybe with a little less, hands-on direct information because they're not watching the news as much or the same types of news. But yeah, it's just it's a global theme that's happening. We're all getting our news media from very different places now, so everyone's coming out with very different stories and perspectives, and it's I think a challenge for us to think about how we bring that together. Like, how do you unite people that are so polarized and see the world, which I believe everyone has really strong moral values behind it, but they just see things differently. Everything's falling into place, and the different bad characters are different to, the kind of characters that we see as bad characters, and the story is just slightly different. But everyone, I think, is still coming from a good place. And so we have to try and remember that and figure out how we bring everyone back together. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably similar to what you guys have been going through as well in the last few weeks.
Wow, answered so diplomatically and politely as would be expected from someone who hails from the land of manners and respect and propriety. So that was really great to listen to. Olivia and I met at a thing earlier this year in Wyoming, um, which is funny. Like looking back now, you talking about different perspectives and opinions of people and sharings of similarities in thought. We had you and I from yourself being from the UK, maybe from the US. We had friends and people that we met there from Australia, others from Hong Kong, all over the country, and then others throughout the rest of Europe. It was a nice little summit of people from different places in the world, and we all kind of shared this appreciation for health and prioritization, particularly of meat, and us not believing that meat was such the demon that in many ways it's being perpetrated to be, and how it's being demonized in so many ways by certain sects and diets and consciousness and religions, freaking whatever, geopolitical schemes.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of there, from all over the world, again, like this little summit of people to be able to show like, hey, we can be coming from different places and different backgrounds and all fingers of the continent, but clearly we were finding something that we've found together, and that is to our benefit, to our healths, and to our families. Even, I mean, yourself, and got to meet Greg while you were there, and him talking about, even, y'all's young one that's cooking and doing things online and finding his own kind of ways with food and his own health. It's like
Yeah.
it's much more than just our own interests, but more so about our spheres of interest, our families, our immediate circles, and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do find that, not just, I think our face-to-face meeting was a great example of it, but it's very representative of the wider carnivore community. I mean, I've never been around people who I feel are so interesting, open-minded, curious, looking for truth, and really being determined to get there, and just genuine, and I think that just comes out even more so when you meet people in real life. It's actually a really exciting thing. Wyoming was a fantastic experience because we all got to see each other in real life, and we see each other normally through this medium, right? But it's really, I was talking to someone who was there actually today, Angela, who's in the UK, and we were talking about how once you are part of this global community, whether it's face to face, whether it's virtual, you realize that you have something very, no matter what your kind of background is, very much in common with everyone, and it's these very core values that maybe, I'm not saying people don't have, but you realize how important they are and how forefront um, they become in your life when you start to go down a path where you're just trying to understand reality and truth and nothing else. And you just have put aside all the rhetoric, and you have put aside all of the stuff that we're told and fed for years, and none of it means anything anymore. You're just focused on understanding what's real and true. And I think that's what unites us. I think that's what's bringing us together. And I think that's a very hopeful future for everyone. Um, and hopefully more people will be part of that. um and it's, it can be hard, I think, sometimes to adjust back into reality and to be with people who are not like that. That's something I find a challenge sometimes, and it's something we need to figure out, because on the one hand, you don't always want to divulge everything that you've learned, because you know that some people might find it a bit difficult, find it a bit kind of kooky, and find it conspiracy theory. um, but you also want to be yourself. And so it's getting the balance right between being who you are and expressing who you are, and figuring out how to do that without putting people off. And I think if we can do that, then we can crack this. And I'm really hopeful right now because, as we were talking before about election results, we have a chance of cracking this now, and that is more than I would have expected was going to happen for at least another 3 decades if we had let things just continue in an organic way. We've had it, a big rocket, um, up the bottom, if you like, put it politely, of the whole movement, and that's incredible. And so maybe more people will start to understand some of these issues now, and we can start to bring people together with the same, appreciating the same facts, appreciating the same problems, and then what solutions we need to get right, to solve health. So I'm hopeful about it, and I think it's really, still, whatever happens, it's amazing to be part of this community. I love it. I love everyone in it.
Yeah, and shout out to Angela and hello to her as well. And she's still out there in the UK. Oh, that's amazing. She's been there for a bit. She's getting lost in the best way. Um, something
Yeah.
you said there about all the things shared in common. I think one that a lot of people realize, but maybe it doesn't get spoken about so much, is that there is an initiation to go through. Like you mentioned, that it can be difficult, a difficult undertaking to first do this, the initial adaptation. There is definitely an initiation, and I think that's a common bond that's shared. Besides our opinions, besides what we like, and like where we come from and different types of allegiances we seem to congregate. I think it's the initiation that's very bonding, because there is an unplugging, there is a disassociation, there is this omission, abstinence, prioritization, like all these things that are kind of philosophical but very personal and very intimate. Talking about having to reintegrate with family or friends or social situations, going back to reality, like you said, because we've all had to step away from that. We've all had to say, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to not eat these things or subscribe to this certain information or material or what these people are saying, ideology, rhetoric, like you said. And that's hard because we're conditioned. We've been fed, again, your words, that our societies have told us, that our families, our religions. are just ways of thinking. And so all of those are big, big, big walls to get through. And they are all on a very personal level, and they're all done by the individual amidst all that.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the family circle, the friend circle, this circle, that circle, like there's so many places you got to get through. And basically, I think when we all show up at those events like we were at in Wyoming, it's kind of like that. That's the ante. That's the debit you've got to kind of pay to just get in. But at the same time, it's a unspoken word that we all have of like, hey, she's done some legwork too. She's had to come from a tough place. Hey, she's bought in. Like, hey, she's gone through this she's crawled, walked, and is now running. It's not like you just show up and you're like, hey, it's like, nah,
Yeah.
like you haven't drank the Kool-Aid. I can tell.
Yeah.
You're I like in the Dark Knight. I know the squealers when I see them, and
Yeah.
right. And it's like you got to go through some stuff. So like what prompted you to do this crazy thing and renounce blah 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 and take up what you've done?
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say sometimes you feel like, would you want to get back in the matrix? Would it just be easier sometimes to just
Oh,
put me back
from the
in?
movie, ignorance is bliss.
Literally, I know. I mean, no, obviously not. But sometimes you think about it, and you go, "Oh God, it'd be so much easier if I just believed everything and just lived that happy, blissful, ignorant life that I was living before." But yeah, in terms of how I got into this, my parents went through many years of being ill. My family all nursed them. My mom had diabetes. My dad had Alzheimer's. So we watched them deteriorate over 10 years, and it
Mm,
obviously was not a nice experience. And I thought, well, this is going to be my lot because these are hereditary diseases. And, as horrible as it was to watch my dad, he was a pilot his whole life, um, and then got Alzheimer's, and he became this, shell of a person as the disease makes you, which is just so sad and tragic that people have to live like that. Witnessing that and caring for someone, you start to think, okay, I think I'm probably going to have a chance of getting this disease, and I really hate the thought of my kids having to do what I'm doing to look after my parents for this length of time. And so I started to just Google how to prevent getting Alzheimer's. That's the first thing that I tried to search for. And there I went down the rabbit hole. I remember listening to someone, it was Eric Berg actually, who said a sentence to me while I was doing a sprint run because I used to run every day because that was my thing. Um, and he said something like, "Good luck burning fat when you have sugar in your blood." And just
mm,
in that it was the first time I was just listening broadly to different things. I'd heard of keto, but I hadn't thought about it particularly. And in that second, something clicked. Like, I think I've just figured something out that I just never thought about before, and I feel very stupid for never having thought about it before, which is that maybe the big oat banana shake that I have every single morning before my run is the reason why I don't lose weight. Maybe that's because I'm doing it because I've got sugar in my blood, which I think, it's all going to just go into a pot at the end of the day. If I've had more calories burned than I have taken in, then I'll lose weight. That was always the mental way that we're conditioned. So that got me down, looking down the keto diet world, and then figuring out that not only can I prevent myself from getting these very diseases that I'm worried about getting, I can actually, almost guarantee that I'm not going to get them, because most of the reasons you're going to get them are lifestyle, and they are factors that you can control. So in a way, it's the
yep,
best news in
yep,
the world. You're no longer doomed to a future of heartache
yep.
and losing yourself, and you can control that. Now, who wouldn't want to do that? It's the most positive message in the world. And not only can you control and prevent yourself getting that particular disease, Alzheimer's, you can, at the same time, by doing the same thing, you can prevent yourself getting all the other things that people are dying
Yeah,
from prematurely, like cardiovascular
yeah,
disease, type 2
yeah.
diabetes, all of the stuff. So, like, for me, that's the best damn message in the whole world. Like, all the things we're worried about, all the things we're scared of getting ourselves, all the things we've had to witness other people getting and go through the heartache of it, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to exist. None of us have to get it. We can turn the ship around tomorrow. That's how simple this is. Not saying it's easy, but it's not a complicated, hard to reach solution. It's sitting in front of us in plain sight. And I was just flabbergasted with finding out this information. Like, if this is true, this changes the world. Why don't we all know about it? Why did I have 10 years of having to watch my dad turn into a shell of himself? And I sat opposite
Mm,
him, at the kitchen table before he lost his mind when he said, "Is there going to be a cure in time? Can you please find out? Can you please?" He was almost
Mm,
like begging me, "Please, like, find a way." While he still had um, some level of lucidity, he said that to me, and I just will never forget that moment where he knew he was slipping away, and he knew that soon it would be too late. And no one has to go through that, and there's millions of people that have had to, and it's really profound to like come across something like this, and it really just throws your whole existence up in the air. um, and so I thought, well, look, my background has always been in the corporate world. I've done a lot of strategy work, I've done a lot of marketing work, looked after big education programs, and I thought the only thing that is important for me to use those skills for right now, it seems, is towards the communication of this message. This message is the most powerful thing that people need to know.
mm,
So, and certainly doing all the research, I knew that there were a lot of doctors in this space, a lot of health professionals in this space, but very few people that necessarily are thinking from the point of view of who are we trying to get a message to, how do we get it out there, and how do we really grow this? And that, it felt like to me, was much more important for me to use my skills for than going back to working for a big corporate. So I decided to not do that, and to just try and make this kind of lifestyle work, and just do as many of these types of projects as I could to move this forward. And that's been 4 years of doing that. So
wow.
it's I've got my fingers in lots of pies right now, but it's just amazing to get up and do something that you're very passionate about, and you can see the benefit, you can see the end result, you can make things happen that actually mean something. um, so yeah, that's kind of my story. As you say, everyone's got a story, haven't they, of getting to this point.
Gosh, wow. That's, I guess now we know where all the poise and public speaking comes from then.
The corporate background.
Yeah, the polished and good presenting and yeah, okay. That makes sense now. Wow, yeah. Seeing your father, like you said, deteriorate had to be a real toll, and the way you phrase that about like um, him telling you to find a cure, like God, that's real world.
Yeah,
That's real world.
it's not a moment
It's
you
a
forget.
I'd say it's a pretty good motivator though. Obviously, like you said, 4 years ago, I mean, for to walk away from a career, obviously, it's probably pays quite handsomely, especially in corporate, and to now become a freedom fighter, which is definitely not something here people do for the money. That's for darn sure, But to have a cause and purpose behind you is a pretty
Yeah,
significant driving force, I'd say, in yours in particular. Wow, it's pretty profound.
yeah.
So,
And I
what's
think
it
you
been
have to.
like?
I was just going to say, I think the other thing, you can have all the passion, but I think what is even more of a challenge for any of us doing any of this stuff is having a really is to be courageous and have a thick skin, because it's every single day that you are kind of looked upon in a weird way, frowned upon, seen as a little bit, she used to be normal, but now she's gone down that road, she's become one of them. That kind of constant, from friends, family, people that you probably thought nothing was ever going to change with, but actually now fundamentally your relationship has changed. I think that's
Right.
one of the hardest parts of this, because there's no end to the passion. The passion is there and it's driving you forward, but it's just dealing with the challenges of being in this space right now that I think um, is a real, kind of credit to the people who are able to do it. So, and that's another reason why I just love everyone in this community. Like, people are just so courageous, and they're so real, and they're so ready for the fight. And I feel like one of those as well. But we all have those days where you just think, God, it would be easier to take the blue pill, get me back in.
I love that you referenced that and talked about ignorance at the beginning of what you were saying before, because I reference the Matrix a lot with people, the movie, and just tell them that scene in particular with the character Cypher when he's like, I can see this steak. I know the Matrix is going to tell me it's succulent, it's tender, and it's juicy, and I'm going to put it into my mouth and blah blah blah. He's like, but you know what I learned after all those years of being unplugged and da da da. And he takes the bite and he's like, ignorance is bliss. And it's so true. I think about that too, but that's another one of those things that we all share in common as far as in the initiation, is that you can't go back. You cannot unsee it. You cannot unfeel it. And so, yeah, every day is a fight, every day is a battle, and you carry that awareness with you. And so each one of us when we meet, especially, and then from what we see of each other as we do online, and however we can keep tabs and keep up, I know every day she's going through adversity. I know every day she's having to deal with people looking at her weird or snickering or thinking like, "What's wrong with this woman?" Like, well, like every day, because I
Yeah.
do too, And it's like again one of those unspoken things of like when we show up to places, it's like it's so warm and the embraces are so significant because it's like I know she's had to get through some shit to be here, and that she's gonna leave and go through some more too because that's what I'm gonna deal with, and you know adopting it is strange, and it's weird to look back and think like nobody cared when I was slamming pints like crazy, and not to criticize or judge against that, but no one cared, no one batted an eye when I did that, no one cared when I was using as
Yeah.
much as I was. It was totally accepted and encouraged, and then when I stopped doing those things is when people started to, hey, what's going, hey man, are you okay? Why aren't you drinking? Did you quit doing other stuff too? And like
Yeah.
what's wrong?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a weird place. I remember years ago, jokingly asking a girlfriend of mine in New Orleans. God, this is almost 10 years ago. She wasn't drinking. We were at a party together, and she said, "No, I'm not drinking." I was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Hey, what's wrong? Why aren't you drinking?" And she's like, "I'm just not." And I was like, "What are you, pregnant?" Like as a joke. And she looked at me and she's like, "Don't say anything." And I was like, "Oh God." I was like, "Oh my God, you are." But like at the time, it was so I couldn't think of another reason why she wouldn't be drinking. So I was like, "What are
Yeah.
you, fucking pregnant?" And she's like, "Don't say anything." And I was like, "Oh God, okay, so you are pregnant." But that was the only reason I could think of. And now for us to not do that, or for people to choose otherwise, it's almost weird. And
Yeah.
then when you add on food to it too, it's like, oh, like, okay, sobriety was enough, Jake. Like that's enough of a deal for me to have to handle with you. But now the fact that you're not eating these foods and you're only eating these foods, you're making me feel bad about myself, unspoken, of course. You're making me feel so terrible about my decisions. I can't handle being around you. No one says
Yeah.
that out loud, but how they communicate that verbally or rather, I should say non-verbally or passive aggressively, is very, very obvious.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting to see that play out, and I think the other thing is that it can go as far as friendships just changing very fundamentally or not even being able to survive. And I've definitely had that experience, and I've had to really sit down with myself and say, am I doing the right thing here? Because I don't know why, but people have a problem with what I'm doing, even though I think it's really commendable. And hopefully one day history will look back at us all and go, thank God for them that pushed this ahead at a time when no one else was even interested. That's the dream that I'm clinging on to right now.
Yeah.
That it will count one day. But right now, it feels like I'm, in the space of my own lifetime, I might be losing friendships, and that's, it's sad. But what is the alternative? Like, are we gonna not be true to ourselves? I can't live with that either. So it is what it is. We just got to, toughen up and keep going.
I know, the pain of sobriety or the pain of clear-mindedness. I shouldn't say pain. The surety of a sober mind, the surety of a clean mind that's being nourished with clean, unadulterated food. I don't want to say how can that be wrong, but like to think that I'm doubting that, or that there's ill temper in that idea, or that there's disdain, or that somehow that idea is tainted. That's hard for me to wrap my head around, as opposed to the criticism that is coming to that by way of a consumer of X, Y, and Z, by way of alcohol, certain types of food, prescription medication, like where they listen to and who they listen to. It's hard for me to say that I'm wrong. I don't want to say right or wrong, but like to think that my thoughts or ideas aren't genuine
Yeah.
and true. It's really hard to believe that. So where, you had a great reason by way of your parents, your father, your mother. Okay, so you flip the switch, you say I'm doing this. What happens immediately the next day, the next, months to your life, as far as in what'd your friends say? Would the rest of your family say? Was this a lone wolf, renegade thing done by you? Did other family members fall in suit because of what you were doing and they saw what also happened to your parents? I mean, siblings, cousins, whatever, or are you alone in doing this?
It's a bit of a mixed bag. So I've got a really big family, and I'd say 80% of them are scientists. And so that makes it interesting. 'Cause
Nice.
I'm not one of the scientists. So I'm, all of this is, heresy that I'm talking right now.
Nice.
And so, and I can understand why, if someone has been through, 10 years of medical education, that they will feel that they know much more than someone who's done a bit of internet searching. I totally get that.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but I also expect and hope that people from a scientific background would be open-minded to things being wrong. And that's not my experience, certainly not in not just family, but friends in general who have that background. There is a certain level of Dunning-Kruger going on, and elitism, for want of a better word, and kind of an intellectual elitism that is just there. So that's a bit of a struggle. I also have a family that is split three ways between us carnivores, a group of low-fat omnivores, and a group of vegans. So
Nice.
that makes things a bit challenging as well. So we kind of have to just avoid the diet conversation in this family, unfortunately. But I do have some great friends who have opened their minds. One in particular that has had a cancer diagnosis, and that's specifically why I talked to her about it and gave her a lot of things to read and research. And she has gone full carnivore and recovered from cancer, so that's felt amazing. Um, and there's been a few others that are very interested as well, have come forth and have asked for more advice and have changed, lost weight, and doing keto or a bit of carnivore. So it's interesting to see who reacts to it, because I just put it out there, and then you see people coming back and going, oh, this is really, I find that really interesting. And then okay, so you're someone who's maybe interested in this and is open-minded, and that's good. But it's never the people who are from a scientific background, and I think that's a real shame, because that's the biggest battle we have in turning this ship around, is getting people to think beyond what they think they know they know. And to consider that we don't know everything. There's still a lot we don't, that isn't settled. It may seem like it's settled. It may be presented to you like it's been settled, but there's been so many people in this space, and yourself included, that have looked at this and said, "I'm questioning what I'm being taught. I'm questioning it now, and there could be another way to look at it." And thank God for those people, because none of us would probably be here without them. Um, and they've saved a lot of lives already. And just like what I was hoping to get on in history, they certainly will, for making those right calls and not being afraid of being, an outcast for a little while in their lives. So I'd say it's a mixed bag. I really find it works well for. I think the thing that we can all agree on, well, not everyone, but enough, is that processed foods are not good. Okay, I don't care for what you think about carnivore. Even low carb can be controversial for people, but most people agree that processed foods, especially for kids, there is no place for them. I mean, come on, there is just nothing that is good from them. If you agree that it needs to be something that kids have as a treat, then it should be a treat and not a daily thing. And so generally, you can get people on side in that realm. And most of the people that I've helped have been parents of friends, of my kids' friends, that have come to me and said, "Oh, I noticed that your kids don't have sugar, and they are doing all this stuff, and they're doing really well with it. How did you do that? How did you get them
Mm.
to not eat sugar?" That's one of the biggest challenges you have as a parent, when your kid's swimming in a soup of ultra processed foods every day. So a lot of what I've done is to try and coach people, sometimes families, into how to get themselves out of that, off that bandwagon of sugar, which isn't easy. And you have to. It's a messy road, but it's there's lots of improvements can be made in that space. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, definitely a bit of a mixed bag, but some really good successes. Um, and I'm hoping that the political environment is going to change some of the narrative that is so stuck that we can't get ourselves away from. Because some people would agree with what we're doing, but from a nutritional standpoint, but would say, well, that's not the right solution for the environment. So
Mm.
there's some big aspects of the kind of zeitgeist that need to get changed. And we ourselves here, I didn't mention earlier, but we've just had an election this year as well. We've elected a party that is the opposite of what the direction you've gone in, and
Oh boy.
is looking to reduce the amount of meat being consumed in the UK by 20%. It is looking to prescribe weight loss medication to the unemployed for free. I mean, there's some crazy kind of ideas coming out on how to solve these problems, and so it's really helpful to have the US going in the right direction so that we can start to use that as a springboard to tackle some of the challenges we're going to have here.
Sick, Scared, and Stupid is brought to you by Life Like Us, a brand dedicated to empowering individuals to reclaim their health, strength, and clarity in a world that often profits from confusion and compromise. Life Like Us believes in the power of self-determination and the pursuit of personal excellence. Their mission is to inspire a return to natural, unaltered lifestyles that support health the way nature intended. Each product is designed and produced proudly in the USA, using only the highest quality materials to share a meaningful message. By choosing Life Like Us, you're not just purchasing apparel. You're joining a movement that values discipline, self-actualization, and the courage to take control of your health. Visit thelifelikeus.com to explore the full collection and become part of a community dedicated to clarity, strength, and truth.
But yeah, I'd say mixed bag. Is my short answer.
Mixed bag for sure. I mean, like you said, meat dominant, low carb, and vegan. You know, that's a great mixed bag. I agree with the one thing hopefully that they can all agree on is the processed foods not serving great nutritional value and certainly causing much more harm than benefit. And I can remember being, I mean, having been a former vegan and a vegetarian before that, thinking that what I was doing was good and healthy, and I was, my reasons to do so were never about environmental consciousness or animal welfare. I was for other reasons why I did what I did then. But looking back, and from what I know now, unless you're a raw vegan or a raw vegetarian and you're eating, vegan things, plant-based things, vegetarian things or foods that have to be made, and guess how they're made? They're processed, right? Unless you're a raw vegan or a raw vegetarian, you're eating lots of processed foods. Period, full stop, bolded, underlined, and italicized. Like, no
Yeah,
doubt about it. You have to be,
but
especially if you're
you're
like
having cooked
an
plants, though,
athlete.
right?
What's that?
You could be having cooked plants, just whole foods.
You could, and I would say I'd be curious to know what their nutritional status is of the persons, right? Any type of deficiencies they might be incurring, what their physical states look like, what their metabolic health looks like. Because sure, you can claim and promote a way of life and a way of eating all you want, but first thing I'm gonna do is look at you, and I'm gonna absolutely
Yeah.
materialistically judge you, the book, by its cover. And if I look at and say like, why would I take health advice from this person? I mean, that's a reality. Like, what you are, we are what we eat, and like, I think it's great that we can look back at photos of our populaces, let's say just 100 years ago in the UK, in the United States. Show me people waiting in a line or a queue, as you would say, somewhere, whether it's to go to the, go to the cinema or outside a newsstand or something like that. The beach. What do they look like? And why did they look the way they did? They looked the way they did because they were consuming the food that existed within their current food supply. They were a perfect representation of what they were eating by way of what was available. We
Yeah.
now are the exact same. We are a perfect representation of what we're eating by way of what is available. So, what foods constitute the majority of our food supply? We are the perfect representative to showcase that. All other things equal. And then even the unequals, as far as in all the changes in modern technology, science,
Yeah.
advancements in medicine, biotech, engineering, telecommunications, data, like everything that we have putting us in the forefront of, I mean, fuck, we're in space and, possibly about to colonize Mars. All that might and infrastructure and knowledge, information. And yet, why, at the most basic level, again, using just the glimpses of people from 100 years ago, why do they look that way and we look how we look? That really makes me scratch my head, you know? And hearing
Yeah.
you talk about that as far as in parties and politics, like, yeah, there's it's top down influence. Leadership is such an infectious thing, and that's why this is such a cool thing that we're all doing, because it's a ground up grassroots movement that has to come from the bottom and swell and build. And it takes leaders to do that, and it takes people that embody, not only by way of what they say, but they have to embody it by being healthy. Like, people can talk all they want and support a rhetoric or an idea, but you can hide behind clothes and windows and just, you can hide behind a lot of things and not really embody those beliefs. But when we're talking about health, it's a little different story. Because if you don't look the part, I'd be like, are you sure you don't do that? Are you sure you eat this way? Because I don't know. Eh.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing as far as an asset on the side of authenticity in this world, in this space, and not to alienate other people or to make them feel disenfranchised or marginalized or persecuted or you know not included. No, but just know the fact that being what we eat and being a representative of that is not about an opinion. That's a statement of fact. And if it's not a fact that we like, then it's about us doing something about it to change that narrative. You hit the nail on the head earlier when we talked about it being simple. You're right. It is simple. And you followed it up with the second part about it, but it's not necessarily easy. Very true. Because
Yeah.
it's easy for you, but it might be very difficult for me. Vice versa. It's a piece of cake for me, very
Yeah.
difficult for you. But the simplicity of it is the beautiful part, because that's the thing we can rely on the most, and the surety that it is simple. Because something that is simple is a matter of fact, is not an opinion. Something either is or is not simple. So having that is like, God, guys, take confidence in that. Take comfort in that. Solace
Yeah.
that it is a simple thing. Do this, this happens. It's a
Yeah.
perfect if then equation. If you do this, this will happen. And if it's not perfectly there, it'll get you damn near close. Right? Like, oh, so you mean to tell me like all my things will go away, and every condition and every issue and all my health? I'm gonna err, and I'm gonna say more so yeah than nah. Way, way, way more so. Will they all totally grow away? Will you be able to grow back a finger that you lost? Will your eyesight completely reset itself in your hearing?
Yeah.
Mm, it could. It damn sure will get closer than the way you're doing it now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the simplicity of it is also it's the hardest part because it's almost like we're selling snake oil. You know what I mean?
Heck
It's like,
yeah.
okay,
Heck yeah.
come on, like you're gonna cure 70% of the world's sickness just by changing your diet and just getting rid of these things. Like, come on, it's a really hard sell. it's
Yeah.
it's too good to be true. I have a person I'm very close to who is just a perfect example of how lost we have got ourselves with nutrition. They are a very, very strong vegan, been vegan for about 15 years. And
Mm.
they said to me when I first went keto, oh my God, you need to get off that diet. It's really dangerous. You need to have glucose for your brain. Your brain can't function without glucose. And they kind of scared me when I first started looking into it. And I had to do a bit more research. And then I realized that was total nonsense. But, the irony is funny because that person, unfortunately, now, 15 years into their vegan journey, is having severe memory issues.
Mm.
And so, and that's a really hard thing to watch after, what I said about my dad. And but their view is that they're totally fine, so they're kind of in denial, but it's really obvious. And so what I did was, rather than have this discussion because we're never going to agree on nutrition, I just said to them, look, my understanding of what's happening is that your brain is not getting enough energy, and it's probably not getting enough nutrients as well because you're not having any of the B vitamins. um, they'll have it like via injection, B12 injections, because they're vegan, but they're not having it in the natural form, the most bioavailable forms. And so I said, look, we don't have to agree on diet, but here is a box of vegan synthesized exogenous ketones. Just go and take them, put some in your coffee, see how you feel, and see if it makes a difference. And so I gave it to them. I don't want any discussion. I don't want to say, look, I'm right, you're wrong, any of that. Um, and that person rang me a couple of days later, and I said, is it making any difference? They said, no, I can't see any difference. I don't even have a memory issue, so I don't even know what you mean and why you gave it to me. And then a month later, they called me and said, "Can I get some more of those ketones, please?" And and I thought, okay, so they are taking it, and they're obviously seeing a benefit. And we're still not having that conversation. We're still not saying, based on the conversation we had a few years ago, where you told me that my brain needs glucose, and now you're taking ketones for your brain. I
Mm.
mean, it's a lot of irony kind of in that scenario, um, as to who's right and wrong. But it surely would lead you to, you would think, would lead you to think, well, if ketones are helping my brain, what does that mean about ketones? Maybe I was wrong about them. Maybe I got diet wrong. Maybe that's why I'm losing my faculties. I'm going to have to start taking ketones. Maybe the whole model and paradigm I'm living in isn't the right one, but that's not happening. So, even when I say, why don't you take it with some MCT oil that will increase the efficacy of the ketones and how much you get out of them, they won't take the MCT oil, even though it's vegan, because it's a saturated fat. So that is the level of of the place that people are in their belief system on nutrition, because they believe that saturated fats are bad, and so they can't have any saturated fats, because one day potentially I might get a heart disease from the saturated fats that I've not had for 15 years, but I have got clear and present issue of brain deterioration, and I'm not going to take the best I can to protect my brain because I might get a heart disease issue in the future. I mean, for me, it's the craziest logic possible. But
Yeah.
people are stuck in a belief system, and that's what it kind of brings out for me. They're not making these decisions objectively. If they were, then why on earth wouldn't everyone just try it? What's wrong with trying something for 6 weeks, 3 months? It's not going to do anything to you, and it might solve everything. That's a kind of a good risk level to take. That's a good trade off. But people don't do it because they're stuck in a belief system, and they will not give up their own, maybe it's pride, ego, I don't know what it is,
Boom,
but
boom,
they
boom,
don't
boom,
want to
boom.
step away. They don't want to come out the matrix. If we want to go back to that analogy, because it's comfortable. And if, everyone else is, if it's normal to die of these things, then I'm happy to be normal. That's almost the acceptance level that people are at. And it really does need a bit of invigoration to get certain people, not everyone. Some people are open-minded, but certain people to think differently.
I mean, phew, you're firing on all cylinders. Ego and pride, top of that list. Mixed in with that is a bit of denial.
Yeah.
And I've been there myself. You're probably still there. I am. There's still times where I'm like, come on, really? Like, and I'm still scratching at it. Is this totally sure? Like, okay, what if I play with this a little bit? What if I mix in with this? And that's kind of like the beauty of why I'm still here, almost 5 years later now, is because as a scientist, the job of a scientist, and I am a scientist I like to think in the purest sense, and really a loyalist to the traditional model of the scientific method. And the job is not to prove law. The job is to test the hypothesis constantly, trying to disprove it. The efforts are to try and disprove. It's not
Yeah.
to create. It's not to try to fist pump and beat chest. I found it. Voila. Eureka. Like, no. It's to constantly test it to try to disprove it. And this is the one that I just can't disprove. And I'm elated to say that. Usually you're like, fuck, like, oh, I can't, it's frustrating. But like, this is like the best failure, the best repeating failure ever, because I
Yeah.
can't disprove it. And for someone like your friends, 15 years of devotion, of loyalty, damn right that's hard to walk away from. You are damn right. I can't, I mean, yeah, like that's so much pride, so much ego, so much commitment, conviction, all the time, all the events they've gone to, all the statements they've gained, all the people they've told or encouraged. And you all of a sudden want me to give that up, Olivia? What are you, crazy? Like, and they're just a microcosm of what else is out
Yeah.
there. What about a doctor? What about a group of doctors, a hospital, an organization, agencies at the federal level that have been telling people for decades, longer than we've been alive, what to do, how to do it, what to eat, what to avoid, what to take? The millions of lives they've affected, influenced, certainly made better, many of them, but how many could have been changed, improved, saved even? Who's to say it? Like, so if your friend, who's a single individual, with their amount of time in the seat, 15 years, how do you convince them? How do you tap into that? And then now going up to the macro level, how do we expect to tap into that mothership that's been supported and promoted and grown and is so insulated? It's got
Yeah.
so, I mean, it is, we're literally looking at the top of, I equate it to like the Marines in Iwo Jima. It's like, you want us to go up there? Are you crazy? Right? Like what? Like we're on the beach looking up at this thing, and they've got this barrage of artillery, and it's extremely fortified. The beach is mined. There's barbed wire and everything. There's pillboxes that are subterranean, and you want us to go up that thing on foot? Yeah, and we're not going to stop until we get it. Oh my God. Yeah, and we lost tens of thousands of people doing it on the first day. Thousands. And that's like what this is like. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we expect to get up there when it's that, protected and defended against? And then there's your friend who's probably just on the surface as far as in what everything else is like, how thick it is up there. And how can we think that we can tap into family, friends, spheres of influence when your intentions are nothing but good, right? And like you said, you're not trying to start a war or like draw lines in the sand, but just rather be like, look, I love you. I care about you. I want you around. I'm selfish and I like you in my life. Call me selfish. Like, I like having you around. You're great company. You're a beautiful person. And I want this for you because I believe in something to be good. And I'm not offering you this because it's poison or that I'm trying to knock you off your horse and what you believe in. But that's reality. I mean, that's as real as it gets right there. So, your motivations were just, obviously you believe in your reasons. What was that like though at the beginning? I know you've got these different, kind of camps within the family now, but what was that like in the beginning around your friends, around your family?
It was interesting because in the beginning, the main change that everyone would be able to visibly see was the weight loss. So I lost 35 kilograms, and um, and that was significant because I had been overweight for many years, and certainly since having kids. And so that was a conversation starter. Everyone's very interested in weight loss. That's the thing to talk about. It's not coming at anyone's, inherent beliefs about diet. It's more about, a kind of a strategy and a tactic that you could use. It's a temporary thing. So, so everyone was very receptive at that point and interested in, the keto diet. And some people said, like my sister said at the time, just be a bit careful with that diet. But generally, people want to talk about it. But when you go beyond that and you're saying, okay, forget the weight loss is really the side issue here. The real thing that I have learned in going through this process is that I am protecting myself against all the diseases that we're seeing, just devour our species. And then it's like I wouldn't necessarily say it like that, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Um, but yeah, conversation starter killer. Um, but then it's a bit like, no, hang on a minute, because that would mean has to change and this has to change. And pharma and, a lot of people I know work for pharma. Um,
Oh boy.
and, that calls into question whether what I'm doing in my life is ethical or not. And that's just too fundamental for people. So you have to come at it slowly. You just have to um, be a little bit careful with it as soon as it gets into that territory. Weight loss, I think, is fine for most people. Ultra processed foods fine for most people. Heavy meat eating and solving the world's problems, not so much. So yeah, maybe it's just you know my marketing strategy isn't quite up to speed yet, but we've had some good. I think it's really on the end of the receiver. I think we put it out there. We live the life. We show what we're doing. We don't come across as just overbearing and a bore with it. I've had vegans that I know in the past that have come up to me and said, "Look, you really have to be vegan because this is the only way to do it, and you're
Hmm.
killing all the animals, and you should be, you're going to burn in hell."
Yeah.
We don't want to be that crowd. We can't be that crowd. We'll lose our audience very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's I think the best way is just get on with living your life, accept that we can't save everyone, but just hope that we can save some and that many in the future will be saved. And we're gonna cut the cord. We're gonna stop the proliferation of this ongoing. That's the best we can hope. And I just have to live with that. I have to be happy with that. Even when people I'm really close to come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm going on a statin because my LDL is high," and I just want to go, wait. Um, they say, "But I don't want your advice. I don't want your advice. Sorry." I'm like,
Mm,
okay,
mm, 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 mm.
well then, I can't say anymore. So it's not easy to go through those situations. But yeah,
No, no, it's not. And but they're very real. And yeah, gosh, when you say that, like it brings it home to me too, because it's awkward and it's strange, and people will, disavow and excommunicate friendships over that. And had a similar conversation with a friend just the other day, a dear friend, texted me, "Hey man, just got my lipid panels back. Just would love second opinion. What do you think? My doctor's a great guy, but he said total cholesterol and LDL was a little high for his liking, and wants to put me on a statin." Just, I mean, it's so common.
yeah,
And I responded, rather than giving my opinion, I was like, "Did he ask you about your diet or your lifestyle?" Me knowing my friend, I know he still drinks a good amount of alcohol. I know his diet could be better. His
yeah,
lifestyle is pretty solid. He trains a lot, but I was like, just those two things alone, the fact that he still considerably drinks a good amount of alcohol, and that he still could certainly improve his diet. I was like, "Did he ask you about your diet or your lifestyle?" No. I was like, "So you're asking me for a second opinion on something to which person's already given you a diagnosis and a suggestion for a prescription medication without even asking you to change something." So basically saying, let's not change a thing, let's just implement this drug and keep you doing what you're doing. And he's like, "Well, what would you say?" I'd be like, "Well, I would say, a lipid panel or any type of biometric marker is a test that you can study for." And this is what I say to clients now. You can show up and get the grade you deserve based on how you've prepared at face value, and you'll get that grade. And if you've been a good student, you're going to get a good grade. But if you're not, you're going to get the grade you deserve. It's not saying you're a bad student, you're just going to get the grade you deserve. Or you can study for the test very, very, very specifically and do very, very, very well. It's very, very, very simple. And I had that happen earlier today with another client. She texted me back and she's like, "I can't believe it. I studied for the test after we spoke. And then, I was expecting to reduce my fasting insulin from this to that, my glucose from this to that, my triglycerides from this to that." Her triglycerides before were 150, 135. She wanted to get them below 80, and they were 49 today.
wow,
And she's like, "I can't believe it." And I was like, "It's a test. You showed up and you got the grade you deserved on the first go. This time, 30 days later, we studied for it, prepared, and look what you got." But
yeah,
people don't even know that kind of information, is almost foreign to many of us. But like, when talking about that early adaptation and what it's like being around others, it's for sure it's a challenge. And yeah, like having the vegans say, come to this side, don't you know it's deplorable what you're doing, and like, how dare you, the morality that you're contrasting. That it's like, it's funny how what I would think to be kind of the non-combatants, as far as in the vegan realm, I would think them to be more of the pacifists and more like it's all good, like, are far more, at least to me, outspoken and aggressive, outlandish, than what I would think the bloodthirsty carnivores would be walking around, like cutting scalps off and with butcher knives and blood all over their faces. But to me, it's a much more passive, like, "Hey, it's all good" community.
yeah.
Um, and just kind of paradoxical in that sense, that I thought it would be different, but it's not.
No, no. I mean, they are missing a lot of B vitamins in their brain, so you have to give them that. Cut
Oh,
them a
and
bit of
and
slack.
yeah, and for everybody else, all the Americans, when Olivia says 35 kilos, that's a lot of weight. That's not a little bit. "Hey, you lost a little weight there." That's, almost 80 pounds. Okay. Um,
I never know it
for
in
the
pounds, so that's good you told me.
yeah, so 35 by 2.2, 35 by 2, 70, add another 20%. I think it's like 75, 76, something like that. And if my math's off, well, fuck. But it's significant enough to when you walk into a room and somebody hasn't seen you in a while, they go, "Whoa,
Yeah.
something's changed." It's not like you
Yeah.
just got your bob done. It's like this is something big. And when you think like, okay, what do I tell them? What do I have to say? Same thing. Have a client that came to me. He was 5'5", so like 160 centimeters tall, and 350 pounds, so like 100 and almost 150, no, 150 plus kilos. Yeah, he's
Wow.
big. He's a big
Yeah.
guy. Not very tall, but big guy.
God,
And
huge.
he's like, what do I tell my family? They're questioning what I'm doing. They say that I'm going to die. They say I should stop doing this immediately. What do I tell them? I said, dude, don't tell them anything. They're not listening. But I was like, but he's like, well, what do I do? I was like, you show them. I was like, they can deny all they want with their ears and their minds, but their eyes won't be able to lie. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, because when you drop 150 pounds, they're not going to be able to say anything. They're going to be jaw dropped and go, oh,
Yeah.
and then they're going to want to know what'd you do, and then still they're going to question it and say it was wrong, but they'll damn sure notice. And it's the same thing with you. Like if you were walking around with a protesting sign, picketing, do this, do that, like a missionary, people are going to tell you to piss off like real fast, right? Nobody wants to hear it. But when you embody it, now you're opening the door to conversation without having to say a word. Oh my God, Olivia. Do people call you Liv for short, friends?
No.
Ever? No. Okay. Of course not, because it's the UK and we say full names. We don't have short names. Oh my God, Olivia! It's so great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, Olivia. You look fantastic? Oh my God, what have you done? It's an absolute conversation starter, like you said, because weight loss is pretty recognizable.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have it on your forehead written. You didn't have to have a shirt that says what you believe in.
Yeah.
Embodying it is a great thing to do, and one thing that everybody takes notice of, because it's that one thing we're all chasing. No matter what we say, no matter what we think about, it's in our minds, about wanting to be
Yeah.
healthy, about wanting to look a certain way. But then when
Yeah.
you tell them, oh boy, well, that would no, you didn't. That can't be healthy. That couldn't have been right. Are you sure that's what you did? Are you sure? Really? I would have thought it'd been something else. You just asked me, I told you. Or even better, they ask you how,
Yeah.
and you say why or how, and they no, there's disbelief. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll just stand here then.
And the other thing is that, when I went from, because I lost a lot of the weight going keto for 2 years, and then I went carnivore for the next 2 years. So, um, I got more weight loss on carnivore, but not that much more because I'd lost a lot already. But I would still say, looking back, that I had many more significant benefits going carnivore than the initial going keto, because
Mm,
the weight loss to me wasn't even what I was seeking, and it was great and it worked. But when I went carnivore, then I noticed things that I just never thought I even had a problem with to start with. And it was so profound and fundamental. And I only tried it because I didn't have any autoimmune, I didn't have any of these things that a lot of people are triggered by, and why they try something as extreme as carnivore. I didn't have any of that. I just did it for curiosity, because I was working with someone who said, "Why don't you just try it and see?" Um, and the probably the most significant thing was waking up one day, looking outside, probably 2 weeks into being carnivore, seeing the sky blue and going, "Oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. I feel amazing. Isn't the world incredible?" Don't make
I'm
me
looking at it.
jealous.
I'm
You're in
looking at it right
Austin.
now.
Stop it.
It's beautiful.
Well, in 7 hours, you're going to be dark like me. Um, and I remember thinking, why do I feel so like positive and happy? Like, why am I feeling something must have happened yesterday that has made me feel happy, and I can't remember what it is. What was it? And it wasn't anything. It was just a Wednesday morning, and it was just like a cloud that had been there my whole life had just been taken away. And I just loved the world, and I loved having a chance to be alive. And that
Mm,
mental health switch for me was just profound, because I didn't have any mental health issues before. I never considered myself as someone who needed mental health support. But I still noticed something that was for me the biggest change that I'd experienced, up until then and even since then. And so, when I tell people that story, that's really uncomfortable. That, like, people just don't get that. Like, what do you mean you didn't, but I feel great. So I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, how can you say now that you feel better than before? But, I obviously don't need that because I feel great now. Like, well, what are you comparing to? Because you don't know. I thought I felt great too,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's things like that which really throw people off. And if you say, all these other things have happened to my body, I feel like at a cellular level, I'm feeling more healthy. I feel more energetic. I feel like, my nails just don't break. They're constantly growing.
They
I
grow too
can't bend
fast, if
them.
anything.
I know. My hair's growing, my
Yep, yep,
eyelashes, everything has just like gone to a different level. I had
yep,
skin issues and I used to have skin tags, they've gone. I used to have a toenail fungus from running, that's gone.
yep.
Everything's just like these tiny little things I would never have even pinned with diet have suddenly sorted themselves out. And you can't explain that to it. It's your body, you know it. And so is where I think, it's very hard to explain that to someone because you have to experience it. And so it's the open-minded that are going to survive here. It's the open-minded that will say, well, I like the sound of that, I'm curious and I want to try it, because what if I'm missing out on the best of life?
Right.
Anyone who can think like that has a chance here. And so we just got to keep telling these stories and hope that whoever's in that camp will hear it and get some benefit.
Well, we know it's getting late over there, and we certainly need to afford you your beauty sleep. Last thing you could give as a mother, as a wife, as a person whose family is very important to her. What do you tell and encourage her? How do you tell someone that's either a wife or mother that's just trying to get into this or try to integrate it with their family, or what's the best move? Like, I don't want to overpressure my children. I don't want to overimpose on my husband, spouse. I don't want to overimpose on my family or my friends. Like, what do you do? What do you tell someone?
I would say just be open-minded and and try. Just try it for yourself. Don't worry about anyone else. Start with yourself. Start with a small change. Start with wherever you are. There's always like a small change that you can make, whether it's just reducing carbs, or it's just reducing plants a little bit, or whatever it might be. Start with something small. Don't fear the rhetoric and the normality and the judgment, because it really, like, anyone who's been through this process will tell you, it is so worth it. Despite all the stuff we've talked about tonight and all the challenges and all the stuff which makes it a little bit uncomfortable, none of it is a patch on feeling incredible every single minute of every single day for the rest of your life. Nothing can compare to that. And also being disease free. You can't put a price on that. Um, and yeah, it may change things, and that's just life as well. Like, we'll grow, we'll get stronger, we'll get more interesting. Just try it and be fearless. And I think that is the way we should all be living anyway.
Try it and be fearless. Well, I'm inspired and motivated, and I think it's a great way to cap things off. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Again, we know it's late out there for you, but it's really great to see you, Olivia, and I'm
Oh, it was
glad you
great to
had
chat. Great
same.
conversation. Thanks for that.
Well, for everybody else, we'll have where you can contact Olivia, follow along with her story, which pies, I should say, she's got her fingers into, as she said before, and how to connect with her online. But for everyone else, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas. We'll see you next time.